The diner had always been a quiet place, tucked away on a corner of a small town where life moved slowly and everyone knew each other. The owner, a black woman in her early 40s, had built the diner from scratch. She worked long hours, serving breakfast and lunch to farmers, truck drivers, and locals who had grown up with her. The smell of fresh coffee and homemade biscuits filled the air every morning, and the place had a warmth that made people feel at home. On that particular afternoon, the diner was busy, the lunch crowd flowing steadily through the doors. She was behind the counter, wiping down tables and smiling at customers, when a loud roar of motorcycles broke the usual calm. She looked out the window just in time to see a man speeding down the street on a black motorcycle, closely followed by a police car with flashing lights. People on the sidewalks were pointing and murmuring, some stepping back as the man swerved dangerously. Her heart pounded. She had seen many things in her life, but this felt different. Something in her gut told her she couldn't just watch. Without thinking about the danger, she stepped outside. The sun was bright, making the man's leather jacket glint as he turned sharply into an alley behind the diner. The police were right behind him. Without a second thought, she ran toward him, waving her arms and shouting, not to stop the chase, but to distract the officers long enough for him to slip into the back of the diner property. The man skidded to a halt behind a dumpster, breathing hard. His helmet was off, revealing a face marked by life on the road, a mixture of toughness and weariness. He looked at her, startled, and then nodded as if to say thank you. She didn't ask questions. She just pointed toward the side door of the diner, urging him to get inside and wait. He obeyed, crouching low and keeping quiet as the officers rushed past the front of the diner, scanning the street but missing him completely. Once the police had gone, she approached cautiously. "You're safe now," she said, her voice calm but firm. The man looked at her with a mix of surprise and gratitude. He wanted to speak, but all he could do was nod again. There was no time for questions. She helped him behind the counter into a small storage room, offering him water. The diner was full of customers, and the man remained hidden, waiting quietly while she returned to her work as if nothing had happened. Inside, she tried to focus on the orders, but her mind kept drifting back to him. He was different from the usual people who passed through her diner. There was a sense of danger about him, yes, but also something human, something that made her want to protect him. She didn't know why, but she felt a responsibility to keep him safe, at least until it was clear he could leave without being caught. Meanwhile, the townspeople outside whispered. Some had seen her intervene, and rumors began to spread. A few people thought she was crazy, putting herself in danger for a stranger. Others admired her courage, though no one quite understood why she had acted so quickly. Inside the diner, she stayed calm, taking orders, serving food and offering smiles, while her mind raced with what had just happened. The man eventually emerged from the storage room, quieter now, calmer. He removed his helmet completely and ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know how to thank you," he said softly, his voice rough from the wind and the chase. She shrugged lightly. "Just get yourself somewhere safe," she replied. She didn't want to get involved in whatever trouble he had, only to help him in that moment. He nodded and walked toward the back exit. Before leaving, he turned back once and gave her a small, appreciative nod. She watched him disappear down a side street, the roar of his bike fading into the distance. The diner seemed to settle back into its usual rhythm, the hum of conversation and clatter of dishes filling the space. Customers carried on as if nothing had happened, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just occurred. Later that evening, as she cleaned the diner and prepared to close, she thought about the man. She had no idea who he was, what he had done, or what kind of life he led, but she felt a strange connection to him, a sense that her actions had mattered in a way she hadn't expected. She had always believed in helping people when they were in need, but this was different. This was more than just kindness. It was courage, instinct, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. Word began to spread quietly at first. People who had seen the chase told their friends, and soon the story reached other places, carried by whispers and conversations. By the time night fell, her small act of bravery had taken on a life of its own. It wasn't long before the tale reached ears she could never have imagined, traveling through networks of people connected in ways she didn't yet understand. She closed the diner, locking the doors and turning off the lights. The night was calm, the streets empty. She sat in the back office, sipping a cup of coffee, reflecting on the day. She didn't know it yet, but the man she had helped was not just anyone. He was part of a community that was tight-knit, loyal, and known for taking care of their own. And now, because of her courage, she had become part of that story, whether she realized it or not. Sleep didn't come easily. Her mind kept replaying the moment she had stepped outside. The adrenaline still fresh. The fear and determination intertwined. She thought about the choice she had made in a split second and how it had changed everything. Even if she didn't yet see how, she felt a mixture of fear and anticipation, a sense that life had shifted in ways she could not yet understand. The next morning, she opened the diner as usual. The town was waking up, the air filled with the familiar sounds of birds and early traffic. She served her first customers, greeted them with her usual warmth, and carried on with her routine. But there was an undercurrent of something different. She couldn't yet name it, but it was there. A quiet tension, a feeling that the world outside her diner had started to notice her in ways it hadn't before. Throughout the day, she noticed subtle signs. A few people glanced at her more intently. Whispers followed her in passing, and there was an unusual energy in the air. Something was coming. She could feel it, though she didn't know what. She served meals, washed dishes, and kept her demeanor calm, all the while aware that her actions from the day before had set something in motion that would not be contained. By the time the afternoon rolled in, there was a sense of anticipation among the locals. The town seemed smaller, quieter, almost holding its breath. She continued her work, smiling at customers, keeping her mind focused on the present. But every so often she looked toward the street outside, her intuition whispering that the next chapter of her life had already begun, and it would arrive faster than she expected. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the diner, she felt a mixture of excitement and unease. She had no idea that her single act of courage, her instinct to help a stranger in need, would lead to an extraordinary event. She didn't yet know that hundreds of people connected to that man would soon arrive at her diner, forever changing the small, quiet life she had built for herself. But for now, she worked quietly, serving food and coffee, smiling at each customer who came through the door, unaware that history was quietly circling around her. She had done what she felt was right, acting without hesitation or thought of reward, and sometimes that is enough to set the stage for something truly remarkable. The morning after the man had disappeared, the diner opened just as usual. The black woman behind the counter greeted her regular customers with a smile, making sure each plate was perfect and every cup of coffee was just right. But even in the normal rhythm of pouring coffee and serving sandwiches, there was a faint unease in the air. She couldn't see it at first, but the town itself seemed quieter, almost like it was holding its breath. News of what had happened yesterday had spread fast. By mid-morning, whispers began circling the diner. Some customers hesitated at the counter, glancing around before speaking. "Did you really help that biker?" a man asked almost in a whisper as he stirred his coffee. She nodded but didn't elaborate. "Yes, I did. He needed help." The man didn't press, but his eyes lingered on her, filled with curiosity. Other customers joined in, recounting bits and pieces of what they had heard from friends or neighbors. Each retelling painted her in different ways: brave, foolish, fearless, kind. She smiled politely, serving plates of eggs and bacon, trying to keep the conversation light. But inside she felt the weight of what she had done. It wasn't just a small act anymore. It had grown in people's minds, and she could feel its presence even before anyone spoke. By midday, someone left the diner door open just a crack, and a motorcycle roared past outside. She paused, glancing out the window, her heart skipping a beat. It was nothing, just a passing biker. But it reminded her that the man she had helped belonged to a world she barely understood. A world where loyalty, respect, and reputation mattered in ways that were sometimes frightening and sometimes inspiring. Throughout the day, the story continued to spread. People stopped by the diner not just for food, but to catch a glimpse of the woman who had helped a Hell's Angel escape the police. Some came out of curiosity, some out of admiration, and a few out of skepticism. They asked questions she couldn't fully answer. Why did you help him? Were you scared? Do you know who he is? She answered carefully, keeping her tone calm. I just helped someone who needed it. That's all. Even the local news picked up the story. A reporter showed up, notebook in hand, wanting to interview her. She agreed, speaking clearly and simply. I saw someone in trouble, I helped. That's what anyone should do. The reporter nodded, scribbling notes furiously. She didn't seek attention, but she knew the story was growing beyond her control. It was no longer just a small-town event. It was a story people were telling across the region. Meanwhile, far from the quiet streets of her town, the man she had helped had reached a safe place. He called his closest friends, describing the woman who had saved him. "She just stepped in," he said, his voice low with awe. "No fear, just did it. I don't even know how to explain it." His friends, members of the Hells Angels chapter, listened carefully. They were impressed, not just by the act itself, but by the courage it had taken. Helping someone in trouble was normal for them, but for a stranger to risk herself, that was rare. That was respect. The bikers began to discuss what to do next. They were used to loyalty being shown in action, not words. And they knew they had to acknowledge this woman who had stepped into their world without hesitation. They made a plan to go to her diner, not to cause trouble or intimidation, but to express their gratitude. It was a decision that carried weight and meaning for them, a gesture that would solidify respect and honor. Back at the diner, she continued her work, unaware that plans were being made. She wiped down the counters, refilled sugar and cream, and smiled at the familiar faces of her customers. The afternoon sun poured through the windows, casting long shadows on the floor. She paused for a moment, thinking about the man she had helped. Who was he really? What would happen next? She didn't dwell on it for long. Life went on, and she had a diner to run, people to feed, and a routine to maintain. By late afternoon, there was a shift in the atmosphere outside. More motorcycles passed by, riders slowing down to look at the diner. A few parked and stepped inside, polite but curious. She greeted them warmly, serving them meals like any other customer, noticing the subtle way they observed her. There was respect in their eyes, a quiet recognition of someone who had acted courageously without asking for anything in return. As the day moved toward evening, the diner began to fill with people she hadn't seen before. Locals and newcomers alike stopped in, drawn by the story they had heard. The woman continued to serve them, her focus on her work, her kindness evident in every interaction. But now there was a sense that she was no longer just a diner owner in a small town. She had become a figure people admired, someone who had shown bravery in a way that inspired others. Her thoughts drifted to the idea of community, the connections that formed when someone acted selflessly. She realized that helping the man had not only affected him, but it had also rippled outward, touching people she would never meet. The small act had become a catalyst, creating bonds and respect in ways she could not have imagined. She felt a quiet pride, but it was not boastful or loud. It was a deep, steady awareness that she had done the right thing. Evening came and the diner began to quiet down. The last customers left and she started cleaning tables and washing dishes. Her movements were methodical, calming, almost meditative, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the day was not over. Something was coming, something bigger than the quiet town, the busy diner, or even the man she had helped. She could sense it in the air, in the way the sun dipped behind the buildings, casting a golden light over the streets. That night, as she locked the doors and turned off the lights, she sat in the back office with a cup of coffee. The quiet hum of the town surrounded her. She reflected on the day, the unexpected attention, and the ripple effects of her actions. She had always believed in kindness and helping others, but this was more than that. It was courage, instinct, and the willingness to stand up for what was right even when it carried risk. Far away, the bikers were preparing for the journey to her diner. They spoke with each other in hushed tones, coordinating the route, discussing how to approach her respectfully. There was a sense of excitement among them, a rare mix of anticipation and honor. They were used to showing gratitude in actions, not words, and this visit would be a demonstration of that principle. They wanted to convey respect, recognition, and thanks in a way that matched their values. Back in the diner, she cleaned the last plate and poured herself a fresh cup of coffee. She sat quietly, unaware of the plans unfolding. She thought about the man, about her town, and about the strange way life sometimes connects people. She felt a sense of calm, a knowledge that she had acted with integrity and that sometimes integrity has a way of returning in ways one cannot predict. The night deepened, the streets empty and silent. The diner sat quietly, waiting unknowingly for what would come next. The woman finished her coffee, set the cup down, and prepared to leave. She locked the door behind her, the sound echoing softly in the empty space. The world outside was calm, but the next day promised something extraordinary. It would bring people, attention, and events she could never have imagined, all because she had chosen to act when it mattered most. As she walked home, the wind whispered through the trees and she felt a sense of anticipation she couldn't explain. She knew that life had shifted in subtle but significant ways. Her small act of courage had reached beyond the diner, beyond the town, and into a world that moved fast, where loyalty and respect mattered deeply. And though she didn't yet know it, the morning would bring a moment that would change everything, linking her story with hundreds of others in a way she could never have imagined. She went to bed that night thinking about courage, human connection, and the unexpected ways lives intersect. She felt proud but not arrogant, aware but not fearful. She had acted out of kindness and instinct, and the world had noticed. Soon she would learn just how powerful a single act of bravery could be, and how it could bring a community together in the most unexpected and unforgettable way. The morning sun rose slowly over the town, painting the streets in warm shades of orange and gold. The black woman opened her diner as usual, the familiar smell of coffee and bacon filling the air. She moved through her routine with practiced ease, flipping pancakes, pouring coffee, and greeting each customer by name. Yet beneath the ordinary rhythm, there was a tension she couldn't explain. Something was different today, though she didn't know why. Far away, the group of bikers who had heard about her actions was making final preparations. They were experienced riders used to moving in packs, but today their mission was unusual. They weren't going to a rally, a race, or a show of strength. They were going to a small diner in a quiet town to thank a stranger who had risked herself to help one of their own. There was careful discussion about how to approach her, how many would go, and how to ensure their visit was respectful. Every member knew the importance of loyalty and respect, and this visit was about both. The woman worked steadily, serving plates and refilling cups. Locals came in, chatting about the recent events, and she listened politely but didn't speak much of her own experience. She had learned that stories grew and changed with every retelling, and she wanted to stay grounded in the truth. She knew what she had done, and that was enough. The rest, she decided, would unfold in its own time. By mid-morning, the first signs appeared. The low hum of motorcycles reached the edge of town, and she noticed the sound as she wiped down a counter. A few locals glanced toward the street, eyes wide with recognition. "They're coming," someone whispered. She paused for a moment, feeling a flutter of anticipation but not panic. She returned to work, trying to focus on the customers and the orders in front of her. Outside, the bikers were arriving in small groups, merging onto the main street in a coordinated pattern. One by one, they parked their motorcycles along the curb, engines humming quietly, helmets removed. They moved with purpose, but there was no aggression, only a quiet respect for the woman who had helped them. They approached the diner carefully, scanning the scene, making sure everything was in order before stepping inside. The woman noticed the first biker who entered. He was tall, wearing a leather jacket marked with patches, his eyes steady and calm. He nodded at her in greeting, and she nodded back, unsure of what to expect but sensing no threat. The diner had always been a place of warmth and safety, and she intended to maintain that atmosphere no matter who walked through the door. As more bikers entered, the diner filled quickly. Locals and regular customers watched in awe as a group that had once seemed distant and dangerous moved calmly among them. The woman continued serving food, plates of eggs and pancakes, sandwiches and coffee, keeping her tone polite and natural. Her hands moved quickly but smoothly, a steady rhythm that contrasted with the excitement building around her. One of the bikers, the one she had helped indirectly by saving their friend, stepped forward. His presence was calm, and he spoke with a voice that carried authority without arrogance. "We're here to say thank you," he said. The words were simple, but the weight behind them was clear. She felt a warmth rise in her chest, a mixture of relief and recognition. She had acted without expecting reward, and now she was being honored in a way she had never imagined. The bikers were polite and respectful, talking quietly among themselves and with her. They asked questions about the diner, complimented her cooking, and shared stories of life on the road. There was laughter, but it was soft and genuine, not loud or intimidating. She listened carefully, realizing that beneath the tough exterior, these men were capable of deep loyalty and gratitude. The act she had performed had touched them in a way that few outsiders could understand. As the day went on, the diner became a gathering place. People from the town and surrounding areas came to witness the event, curious about the story they had heard. The woman continued her work, serving food and drinks, answering questions when necessary, but mostly letting the moment unfold naturally. She noticed how her presence and calm demeanor helped the bikers feel comfortable, turning what could have been a tense situation into a shared moment of connection. She began to understand the significance of her actions in a new way. Her choice to intervene to help someone in need without hesitation had created a bond between her and the bikers. It wasn't just gratitude, it was respect, loyalty, and recognition of courage. She realized that sometimes small acts of bravery could ripple outward, affecting people and communities far beyond what she could see. The bikers remained for hours, sharing stories, eating, and interacting with the customers. Their presence brought a sense of excitement and awe, but also a deep appreciation for the woman who had acted selflessly. She saw the way they looked at her, not with suspicion or judgment, but with respect. It was a reminder that courage and kindness are recognized in all walks of life, even among those who might seem the most distant from it. Throughout the day, she noticed how the atmosphere in the diner had changed. The usual rhythm of coffee and conversation now carried a sense of celebration and acknowledgement. She moved through the space with quiet authority, maintaining order while allowing the bikers and customers to interact freely. The diner had become more than a place to eat. It was a space of human connection, of gratitude and recognition, brought to life by a single courageous act. By late afternoon, the bikers began to prepare to leave. They spoke quietly among themselves, coordinating their departure while making sure to leave on a respectful note. Before leaving, the one she had helped stepped forward again. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice carrying sincerity. "You've earned our respect and we will not forget this." She nodded, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. She hadn't acted for recognition, but this acknowledgement was meaningful in a way she had not anticipated. It reinforced her belief in doing what was right, in helping others when it mattered, and in trusting that courage and kindness would be recognized, even in unexpected ways. As the bikers left, the diner slowly returned to its usual pace. Regular customers resumed their meals. Conversations flowed naturally, and the quiet rhythm of the town reasserted itself. The woman cleaned tables and refilled coffee pots, reflecting on the day and the extraordinary events that had unfolded. She realized that life often brings moments that test courage and character, and that how one responds can create connections and memories that last far beyond the moment itself. Evening fell, casting long shadows across the diner. The woman locked the doors, turning off the lights and taking a moment to sit quietly in the back office. She thought about the bikers, about the man she had helped, and about the ripple effect of her actions. She felt proud but humble, aware that courage is often quiet and unassuming, yet capable of creating profound impact. That night, as she walked home, the streets were calm, the air cool and crisp. She reflected on the events of the day, on the lessons learned, and on the unexpected ways life can connect people. She realized that bravery is not always loud or heroic in the traditional sense. Sometimes it is simply stepping forward when others might step back, offering help when it is needed most. She returned home, feeling a sense of peace and accomplishment. Her actions had created a story that would be remembered, not just for the dramatic events themselves, but for the humanity and courage that underpinned them. She knew that her life, and the lives of those around her, had been touched by something extraordinary, and that the bonds formed that day would last long into the future. As she prepared for sleep, she felt a quiet anticipation for what the next day might bring. Life had shifted in subtle ways, and she knew that the story was far from over. The biker's visit had been a powerful reminder that courage, kindness, and loyalty are recognized across all walks of life, and that a single act of bravery can create connections and memories that endure. She drifted off to sleep with a sense of calm and fulfillment, knowing that she had done the right thing, and that her actions had set in motion a series of events that would continue to unfold, touching lives in ways she could never have imagined. The night was quiet, the town asleep, but the world had changed slightly, shaped by her courage and the unexpected power of one simple act of kindness. The next morning, the town was buzzing with a quiet excitement. Rumors had already begun to spread that the bikers who had been helped were coming to the diner. Locals spoke in hushed tones, wondering what might happen. But inside the diner, the woman moved through her routine as always, greeting each customer with a warm smile, flipping pancakes, pouring coffee, and maintaining the calm atmosphere she had worked so hard to create. As the day wore on, the first motorcycles appeared on the horizon. One by one, they roared down the main street, a long line of black leather jackets, chrome gleaming in the sunlight. The sound was loud and commanding, but there was no aggression, only a sense of purpose. The woman paused briefly at the counter, her heart beating faster. She had expected a visit from a few bikers, but the scale of this was far beyond what she had imagined. The motorcycles began to fill the street in front of the diner. Over 300 bikers had arrived, parking in neat rows, their engines rumbling in unison. Locals stopped in their tracks, staring in disbelief. Some took out their phones to capture the moment. Others simply watched, unable to believe their eyes. The diner, small and modest as it was, suddenly became the center of an extraordinary event. Inside, the woman continued her work, serving customers while keeping an eye on the growing crowd outside. The first bikers entered through the door, walking carefully, their eyes scanning the room, ensuring everyone was safe. She greeted them politely, offering food and coffee, her movements steady and calm despite the chaos outside. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation, yet there was a sense of respect that hung in the air. As more bikers filed in, the diner began to fill. They spoke quietly among themselves, laughing softly, sharing stories of the road and of their brother who had been helped. The woman noticed the way they looked at her, not with suspicion or judgment, but with admiration and gratitude. Their presence was imposing, yes, but it was also full of warmth, a reflection of the loyalty and respect that defined their community. One of the bikers, the man she had indirectly helped, stepped forward. His expression was calm but serious. "We're here to say thank you," he said simply, his voice carrying the weight of sincerity. The words were brief, but they resonated deeply. The woman felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of relief and pride. She had acted without thought of reward, and now she was being recognized in a way that exceeded anything she could have imagined. The bikers began to move through the diner, interacting with the customers and locals who had gathered. They were polite, respectful, and engaging, answering questions, sharing stories, and making sure everyone felt comfortable. The diner was no longer just a place to eat. It had become a space of connection, gratitude, and human kindness, brought together by a single courageous act. The woman continued serving food, moving quickly and efficiently, but with a calm presence that grounded the room. She noticed the subtle ways the bikers showed respect, not just to her, but to everyone in the diner. They held doors open, spoke quietly, and offered smiles. It was clear that their visit was not about intimidation or spectacle, but about gratitude and acknowledgement. As the hours passed, the diner remained filled with the hum of conversation, the clatter of dishes, and the soft laughter of the bikers and customers alike. The woman observed the scene with a quiet sense of awe. She realized that her simple act of courage had created a moment that would be remembered by everyone present, a story that would be told for years to come. Outside, more motorcycles continued to arrive, adding to the impressive sight. Locals and passers-by stopped to watch, amazed at the spectacle. Some had never seen so many bikers in one place, and yet there was no fear, only fascination and curiosity. The woman continued her work, her calm presence anchoring the room amidst the extraordinary events unfolding around her. The bikers remained for much of the day, sharing meals, talking with customers, and expressing their gratitude in quiet, meaningful ways. One of them presented the woman with a small gift, a token of their appreciation. She accepted it with humility, grateful for the recognition but more aware of the human connection that had formed. It was a reminder that kindness and courage are recognized across all walks of life. By late afternoon, the bikers began to prepare for their departure. They spoke quietly among themselves, coordinating their exit and ensuring that the woman and her customers were left in peace. Before leaving, the man she had helped stepped forward again. "Thank you," he said, his voice carrying sincerity and respect. "We will not forget what you did." The woman nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had acted out of instinct and compassion, and now she was seeing the ripple effects of her actions in a powerful, tangible way. The bikers filed out one by one, climbing onto their motorcycles and revving the engines for the journey home. The rumble of their departure echoed through the streets, a reminder of the extraordinary day that had unfolded. Once the street cleared and the last biker had left, the diner slowly returned to its normal rhythm, Regular customers resumed their meals. The chatter of conversation resumed, and the quiet rhythm of the town settled back into place. The woman cleaned tables, washed dishes, and reflected on the events of the day. She realized that courage, kindness, and empathy have a power that cannot always be measured, a force that can touch lives in unexpected and profound ways. Evening descended, casting long shadows across the town. The woman locked the diner doors, turning off the lights, and sat quietly in the back office. She thought about the bikers, about the man she had helped, and about the extraordinary series of events that had unfolded. She felt a sense of pride, not for herself, but for the quiet courage and humanity that had guided her actions. That night, as she walked home, the streets were calm and peaceful. She reflected on the day, on the bonds formed, and on the recognition she had received. She realized that bravery is often quiet, humble, and unassuming, yet it has the power to create profound impact. Her single act of helping someone in need had connected her to a community in a way she could never have imagined. She returned home, feeling a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. Life had shifted in subtle but meaningful ways, and she knew that the story of the day would remain with her forever. She understood that courage and kindness are not always loud or visible, but they leave marks that last, shaping the world in ways that are sometimes immediate and sometimes slow to reveal themselves. As she prepared for sleep, she felt a quiet anticipation for the future. Life had changed, not because she sought recognition, but because she had acted with integrity and compassion. The events of the day had shown her that even small acts of courage can have far-reaching consequences, creating connections and memories that endure. She closed her eyes with a sense of calm and fulfillment, ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that her actions had made a difference, and that the bonds formed that day would never be forgotten. The morning after the biker's visit, the diner felt different. The air seemed lighter, almost filled with a quiet sense of pride and warmth. Regular customers came in, chatting about what had happened the day before. Everyone wanted to hear her perspective, to know what it was like to host such a unique gathering. The woman greeted them with her usual smile, pouring coffee and preparing plates, but there was a calm strength about her now that hadn't been there before. She had faced something extraordinary and had handled it with courage and grace. Stories about the visit spread quickly. Word traveled beyond the small town, reaching nearby communities. People told friends and family about the day over breakfast tables, in offices, and at local shops. The story of a black woman who had helped a Hell's Angel and received a visit from hundreds of bikers captivated people. But it wasn't the drama that caught attention. It was her courage, her humanity, and the respect that the bikers had shown her. It reminded people that kindness and bravery exist in the most unexpected places. Life at the diner returned to its usual rhythm, but there was an unmistakable sense of connection lingering in the air. Customers lingered longer, conversations were warmer, and a few bikers returned for regular meals, giving the woman a nod or a quiet smile. She recognized them instantly, but they were no longer strangers or intimidating figures. They were people who had shown gratitude in a way that touched her deeply. This reinforced her belief that courage and kindness have a way of building bridges, even between people from very different worlds. She reflected on how a single moment could create so much change. Helping the man on the motorcycle had seemed like an instinctive act, a simple choice in a split second. Yet that choice had grown into a story of loyalty, respect, and human connection that extended far beyond her diner. She thought about the bikers and the values they lived by: honor, respect, and standing up for one another, and realized that those values aligned with her own, even though their worlds seemed so different. As days turned into weeks, the diner became a small landmark in the town. People came not just for the food, but to see the place where courage had intersected with humanity. Visitors asked questions, wanted to hear her story, and some left quietly, moved by the simplicity and depth of her actions. She continued her work, serving meals, cleaning tables, and greeting everyone warmly, but she did so with a quiet awareness of the impact her actions had made. Occasionally, bikers stopped by to say hello, often bringing small tokens of appreciation. They never imposed, never demanded, but each gesture reminded her of the day when hundreds of riders had filled her diner in gratitude. She realized that this was not about fame or attention, but about genuine human connection, mutual respect, and shared understanding. The bonds created that day were lasting, built on trust and the recognition of bravery. The woman also noticed changes in herself. She felt more confident in her ability to handle unexpected situations, more certain of her instincts and more connected to the community around her. She understood that courage doesn't always have to be loud or public. Sometimes it's quiet, simple, and deeply personal. And yet even the smallest acts can resonate far beyond what anyone could predict. As the town continued its daily life, the story of her bravery became part of local history. People told it to visitors, to children, and at gatherings. It became a tale not of danger or confrontation, but of kindness, courage, and respect between people from completely different worlds. She would often listen quietly when others recounted the story, feeling a mix of humility and pride, knowing that her actions had inspired others and created a ripple of goodwill that reached far beyond the diner. The bikers occasionally returned, sometimes individually, sometimes in small groups, to check in and share news from their travels. Each visit reinforced the sense of community that had formed. She welcomed them, offering meals and conversation, learning more about their lives and experiences. Over time, the diners and bikers developed a quiet understanding, a mutual respect rooted in that first act of courage and recognition. Her diner became more than a place for food. It was a place of stories, connection, and inspiration. Visitors and locals alike came not only to eat, but to witness and feel the legacy of a single brave choice. People left the diner with a sense of warmth and hope, seeing how courage and kindness can create meaningful relationships, even across seemingly impossible boundaries. Months passed, and the woman continued her work with the same dedication and care she always had. But she did so with an awareness that her actions mattered in ways that were lasting. She understood that life often presents moments where courage is required, and that the way one responds can shape not only personal outcomes, but also the lives of others. The respect she had earned from the bikers and the impact of her actions on the town became a quiet testament to the power of human goodness. The story reached further than she could have imagined. People from neighboring towns visited, seeking to witness the diner and meet the woman who had acted with such courage. The local news occasionally revisited the story, highlighting her bravery and the remarkable response from the biker community. But she remained humble, focused on her work, and on treating each customer with the same care she had always shown. Over time, the diner became a symbol of the unexpected ways life can connect people. It stood as a reminder that acts of kindness, no matter how small or seemingly ordinary, have the power to create lasting bonds. The woman understood that her actions had created a legacy, not of fame or wealth, but of respect, courage, and humanity that would be remembered long after the day had passed. She continued to live her life with quiet strength, welcoming each day as it came, always aware that her choices mattered. The visit from the bikers remained a vivid memory, a moment when courage and kindness intersected to create something extraordinary. It reminded her that no act of bravery is too small, and that compassion can build bridges in even the most unexpected ways. Years later, people would still talk about the diner and the woman who had helped a Hell's Angel. It would be remembered not as a story of danger, but as a story of human connection, courage, and the respect that can emerge when someone chooses to act with integrity. The diner remained a place of warmth, food, and shared stories, a lasting legacy of one woman's courage and the extraordinary ripple effect of a simple, selfless act.